Welcome, everyone, to our second edition of the 2025 season of the Center Grove Trojan Beat. I'm Chris Wood, joined by the famous extraordinaire himself, Mr. Rob Thompson. And in this next episode, we have the opportunity of bringing in someone who's very influential at the high school day in and day out with both the students, the athletes, and the community. And that would be the athletic director, one Joe Bronkella. Joe, welcome to the program tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Welcome, Joe.
Hey, Rob.
So, Joe, this is year 3, I believe, for you here at Center Grove, and the opportunity to be here. If you wouldn't mind, kind of first take us back and the opportunity that came about in coming to Center Grove, and what made you be interested in that chance to come to Center Grove?
So I was an athletic director down in Madison, which is a couple hours southeast of here. And, I've always had the want and inspiration to get to a bigger school. Madison's smaller, I think 800-ish kids. And then the opportunity arose in 2022 where Scott Knapp was leaving to go to a different school. The job ended up getting posted, and I was like, well, what the heck? Why not try now? So threw my name in the hat, went through a pretty rigorous process, and got the opportunity to be where I am now.
So we'll kind of go on the history of Joe Bronkella's life with this, and so just some commentary for me. Super happy that you're here.
Yes.
I've had, unfortunately for you, you've had to deal with me through the basketball with Hardwood Club and leading that initiative. But, I think if there's anybody that doesn't know who Joe Bronkella is, and in the short time that I've known you in the last 3 years, that you are for the student athlete, and you are for our sports programs, and you are there to provide the best situation and environment you can. And there's a lot, and I think there are a lot of people that are involved in that have all kinds of different initiatives. And for you to be able to navigate that in this community, although it's a great community, can be very challenging and difficult. So I compliment you on that. I think you've done a heck of a job in your first 3 years, and I'm excited to kind of get into tonight about what do we have look forward to with you as our leadership from the athletic standpoint. But let's go back. Let's learn a little bit about who Joe Bronkella is. I'm going to start. You grew up in Anderson.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is that kind of where the educational that's where your career started?
So I played sports. I went to Anderson Highland, which is no longer there. They consolidated. Yeah, the Scots. Yeah, good history. We had 3 high schools when I was a senior. Now they have 1. So big changeover in population. And then I actually went to college to Ball State to become into business and money. And then I had to do a couple different type of practicums, and went over to the education. And I knew some people from Anderson Highland. I said, hey, do you care if I come in and observe PE class? And I was always in athletics. I coached and so forth. And like, yeah, sounds great. So I went in there and went and changed my major. Not too long after that, transferred to Anderson University, graduated from there, started teaching in Anderson. I was an AD at the middle school there, Southside Middle School. And then moved down to Florida, coached football, coached basketball, came back to Indiana, went to Columbus East, coached football, coached baseball, coached a little bit of basketball at middle school, coached some track, a little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. Was in Columbus for 11 years, and then wanted to do the big jump to the high school in regards to athletic administration, and got to Madison, was there for 5 years, and then this opportunity arose. And by the way, I do deal with you in the Hardwood Club, but let's remember, you were a freshman coach when I first got here, so I had those headaches first.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, good. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I don't want to let you forget those type of things.
Yeah, like there's only one coach that he had to supervise at the freshman level. It was me to make sure.
I did not miss a freshman game that year. I even went on the road, didn't I?
Yeah, make sure I didn't get thrown out. So the Madison was kind of your first full-time AD job.
Yeah, so there I had high school and middle school.
Okay.
So every sport at the high school did not have at the middle school. So while I was there, one thing I wanted to do is try and help develop the feeders. So soccer, baseball, softball at the middle school level, we introduced those and brought those in. it was going to be a long process because the participation numbers were down. The parks department down there is pretty solid.
Okay.
So trying to help work with them and leverage like, hey, we need the kids for our sports season as well as you guys need it for your seasons. Eventually, it ended up working well to where the girls soccer that we started, their high school team won a sectional this year, which is something that's awesome down there. But having both schools, even though the population of the high school was only 800, the middle school was 5th through 8th grade, which was about 1,200. So really, I had 2,000 kids, but I had every sport times 5 levels because I had 7, 8 freshmen, JV, varsity. So administering contracts, officials, doing the events, everything that you see us do, doing that at that level is quite high. Which I also knew that coming here, people are like, oh, you're at a school of 800. Well, I was kind of at a school of 2,000.
Yeah.
If you look at all those type of things, I mean, the balancing out of the season's a little bit different. We do a lot more crossover here, where fall's still going and winter's begun, winter's still going and spring has begun. Summer starts and we're still in spring sports. Then all of a sudden we have a couple weeks and then here's fall again.
Yeah.
That was not something that I had down there. So the seasons are longer. But in retrospective events, it's probably very similar in the number of events, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit, and I've seen it and been involved in youth programs and all that have a parks presence or a youth center presence where maybe there's not a feeder system versus maybe like a school like Center Grove where there might be some options out there, but I would say some of the best feeder programs around are the ones that we are in control in our community.
Yes. So not only was I the athletic director of the 2 schools, I was the park board president.
Oh.
So I had a lot of
dipping.
Well, kind of. It was a free deal, but
there are jokes on this podcast. Jokes.
I had an opportunity to see both worlds of it. So the deficiencies that they had at Madison, they didn't have youth soccer. They didn't have youth. They had some youth basketball, but not to what we have here. So the Parks Department was a great supplement. So when I got to my role down there, I had an opportunity to work with the high school head coaches and the Parks director, because there was actually a person that oversaw all the programming, to where they would provide each other input. And we would help them with facility usage because we had all the facilities that they didn't have, or the big stage for like the championships. And then we would work hand in hand. And, like our football players would go down and officiate the youth football leagues. Our basketball players would go down and officiate. And so it helped get our kids some knowledge of the game that they may not see in regards to an official. And it gave them the opportunity to give back to the community. Plus, what they didn't know was helping develop the next layer of what was coming up.
Yeah.
For your feeder programs, do you feel like it's something that's essential to have for all of your sports? I mean, I hear from people all the times that for your softball and your baseballs, why don't we have middle school programs for that? And as a middle school coach, I would argue, do you really need that if you have that success? But there's a lot of people in the community who talk about that, so I kind of put that out there. Is it something you think is essential for all programs, or is it just case by case?
I think a lot of our youth have opportunities here. The youth baseball league and the Lassie league, they have opportunities to play lots of games. What kind of head coach input they have in regards to the development of whatever the league has. I mean, I'm not involved in that part of it. That's more of like a Coach Hatfield, Coach Coleman, and so forth. But it's really all about getting opportunities. And what we didn't have down there were kids that were getting opportunities in some of those other sports or seeing the exposure to those other programs. If you have a great youth program, whether it's Bantam football or the CGBBL, CGGBL, they do a great job of getting kids opportunities. And then we have the Lassie, who was a little bit more removed from the high school. They're doing the same thing.
Sure.
I think if we have opportunities in our community, that's what we want as overall. Whoever runs it doesn't matter to me as long as kids are getting an opportunity to get into that game or get into that position. And maybe they don't play it in high school. Maybe it's just an exposure to keep them active. Maybe it's something for them to do in the off season. I as a former PE teacher and health teacher are all about wanting to get kids active. That's the important piece to me.
So starting your time at Madison, okay, you were there 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Take us through kind of that trip, that journey. of your life, with your family and you, and then we'll get into that decision to move north. But just kind of give us a 30,000 view of what that was, what that experience, that time for you was.
So my kids grew up. One was born in Florida when I was down there. The other one was born in Columbus. So my kids grew up in Columbus. They did youth basketball there. They went through the elementaries there. And then, like I said, I had the opportunity to go to Madison to be an athletic administrator. And the first, I believe, 6 months, I commuted it while we were working on the exit strategy for our kids. The one that was going into high school, she came with me. And so she did actually 8th grade, part of 8th grade, and then high school at Madison. The other one was in 6th grade, and she did, 7th and 6th. She did cheerleading and was part of the EBL, which is the youth basketball programming on the cheer side. And we didn't want to take that away from her. Plus, they did the DC trip. There's all kinds of other things looking at the kids. So what actually happened is the first half of my year, I commuted to Madison with my eldest daughter. And then on the second half of the year when we moved, my wife and my younger daughter commuted back to finish the school year. My wife was an educator also in Columbus. So when I got there, it was kind of a really weird split household, which, this is a foreshadowing to later, as we'll talk about, to see how that worked.
Yeah.
But, it was difficult. It was a decision we did as a family. It was a career choice for me and for what we were going to do with our future. And my family has been nonstop supportive and all in with this, not just to Madison, but even to Center Grove, as we'll discuss later.
Yeah, and I would just comment on that. Like I kind of know what you've had to go through and the change to make the jump, and I would say, you've got a beautiful family. When they're here, and you've never squandered at times to not be with them when you had to, right? There were many times, hey, we got this. Hey, man, I'm going to Madison for the weekend, right? Or so. Don't know how you did it, how you guys do it. We don't need to get into any of that. But from afar, I mean, it's admirable how committed you are to your occupation and still being a father and a husband.
It's a very tough road, and it takes a lot of understanding kids who probably had to mature a little quicker than we'd wanted in regards to dealing. When I had the opportunity, and we can dive into the Center Grove decision, when I had the opportunity to interview and I got through the first round, you do these things and you feel like, oh man, I better look a little more serious about what's going to happen next week if they call me back.
Yeah.
And so, I went back and not a lot of people knew that I had interviewed from where I was. And then the second round came, and when I did that interview, I came back and I was like, I really crushed that one, I feel like. And obviously it worked out because I'm sitting right here 3 years later.
Yeah.
But, we had a discussion with my family. I had a junior and a senior in high school. And I said, I respect your decision to start something and complete it. And if that's what you want to do, that's what we'll do. We'll figure it out. But this opportunity arose, and I would like to go for it. What do you think? And actually, I wasn't really high on thinking about doing it. And my youngest daughter was like, Dad, I think you should do it. I think you should go for it. And my wife and I talked later about it's a great thing to show that your kids, that you have a goal to go toward and you work toward it. And sometimes you have to make a sacrifice, but in the long run it pays out, and it did for us. But yeah, for 2 years as they were graduating, I lived in Southport throughout the week and commuted back and forth on the weekends. So if an event lasted till, like if we would have had Jennings County last week, would have got done at 9 o'clock at night, would have drove back to Madison after cleaning up, got there probably about midnight, spent Sunday at home, and then back here by 7:45 in the morning on Monday.
And I believe the Jennings County thing, because we were down there 2 years ago, and that's what you were doing.
Yeah, I was there and then went. Luckily, it's only 25 minutes from Madison.
I know,
so
but that was a
great
top 5, top 10 show down there. But
I will say the tough ones are going to Brownsburg on a Saturday and driving from there to Madison. Yeah. That was pretty rough.
Yeah. So just some notes that I had for Madison. We'll talk about Madison real quick. Just some of the things that I was able to pull out, talk about what you accomplished there, and then we'll kind of transition to what Center Grove is and what it means, and you coming into this community. So some things I did read, and I'll just kind of read them off, and then you can hit them as you need. But You wanted to improve some of the operational side of what was going on down there, which you kind of already hit on. Implementation of participant enhancing technology, multiple facility upgrades, student-focused initiatives and programs to develop leadership, and then an unwavering commitment to integrity and accountability among your coaches and student athletes. Talk us through what it was, and then what you think it is, your perception when you left.
So the good thing about Madison, it was a clean slate. I feel like I had the opportunity with my principal, who's actually at Greenwood now, to come in and kind of design the way that my vision had for that area. And they were a little behind in facilities. They were a little behind in the way that they did evaluation processes. They were way behind in how they did contracts. So coming in, I actually talked to a veteran AD and said, hey, come down with me after I got the job. Let's look at what you think are some very necessaries, and I want to prioritize what we'll do. And within the 5 years, we upgraded every facility, including putting in and installing turf field, which I was told when I got there, we'll never have that here. They did. Locker rooms outside, locker rooms inside, new gym floor, new soccer fields, redid the baseball diamond, held the North-South All-Star game down there. I mean, there were a lot of great things that we had opportunities to do, and a lot of upgrades that we got to do. I had the opportunity to do. There's a lot of things I learned along the way. I never knew that in a turf field, every one of those little white lines are an individually stitched item that they have to come in and stitch in. Wow. Like that. You think that whole big green field is just there, just and they bring it in that way and roll it out.
Yeah.
No, they lay the green, then they stitch everything in, and everything costs money, every little thing. And so I got to learn all that design. The bad thing was it was during COVID, but the good thing was it was during COVID. Yeah. So we didn't have a ton of interruption, and we had the opportunity to do some of those online ticketing. They had no idea. They'd never done that. Out of that, the simple things like digital rosters, being able to scan a QR code to see a roster, which we do here now. That's something that they didn't have, and nor did they have the progression of going into. And I actually believe the guy I followed, he was only there for like a year or two as an AD, but he was from Center Grove. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did not. Who?
Cliff Hawkins. That's who I followed.
Cliffy. Yeah.
But he followed a long-time AD that was good at his position, but he wasn't adaptive into technology and that type of stuff, which is fine. Everyone has their own thing, and he was great at what he did.
Yeah. Cliff was a great basketball coach in a lot of ways as well. So you talk about those changes you implemented at Madison, and obviously it comes down to funding for that. How did you organize the funding? What steps, what challenges did you go through to help sell that? Because that seems like a lot for that amount of time period.
Funding was huge. When I started, there were some things that we did with sponsorships, donations, simple little things that you upgrade and that we did that you had no idea, like bleacher curtains. We have them here. A lot of the stuff I did, we have here, which is another very great incentive to come and not have to rebuild an entire school. But, bleacher curtains, and then getting a sponsor like, hey, let's put your name on it so everybody that comes into our event, you're observed, and then it's helping us with the safety feature, because we used to have all kinds of little kids going under our bleachers and in the middle of events, which can be pretty dangerous, or, you never know what, it's very dark down there. Who knows what they trip on or hurt themselves. I worked on a deal with Adidas Kratz, which is a vendor that they had down in Louisville area. And one thing that I noticed is that you may have a basketball team that has this kind of red, a softball team that has this kind of red, a football team has this kind of red because they're Champ Pro, Nike, Adidas, Reebok, whatever it may be. I wanted to try and make more of an alignment of that. The good thing is I had vertical alignment because I was also in charge of the middle school, so it was a kind of a 2-for-1 on everything that we did. And so then people would get used to that in the 5th, 6th grade level, come all the way up, and then they knew what to expect. But it was nice that I had a clean slate, a very supportive principal, supportive superintendent, sponsorship monies. A lot of people don't understand how the funding of sports happen. Here ticket sales and season passes are the major revenue that fund what we can give to our kids. The corporation covers the coaches' salaries. We do a lot of the rest. So trying to work with sponsorships down there was huge. Same thing with here. And then eventually bonds opened up, which, a bond was go to a school corporation / community in some way, whether it's the city, the parks department, the schools, or so forth. And we had the opportunity to open up a couple bonds, which is how we got our turf field, our outdoor locker rooms. We got some video boards, and actually that came from when I was coaching the East. We came to Center Grove, and I was like, oh man, I got to get one of those one day. Well, we got the opportunity to do that down there.
So let's move ahead. 2022. Family gave the blessing. You roll up to Greenwood, Indiana, which you're from the area, so you kind of already knew what Center Grove was or wasn't based on your perceptions. And I think what's unique about this, and we don't have to get into it too deep, but most of the people we've had on this have either younger adults have grown up here or that have been here for 40 years.
Right.
You've been here for 3.
Yeah, my only exposure to Center Grove was when I was in high school. There was one baseball team ranked higher than us that I'd never heard of in this little farming community called Center Grove, and I was at Anderson Highland. We were 2, they were 1 all season. This guy named AJ Zapp, which I work with now in regards to BSN, was one of their players. So I knew of him because he was Mr. Baseball and so forth.
Yeah.
And then when I got to Columbus East, we came here for a football game, and they came to us for a football game, and that's all I really remember around that time frame. And then down in Madison, when we went to the regional for golf, there was this pesky school called Center Grove that would always be in the top 3. So I didn't have a ton of exposure. I wasn't from this area. I was in the Columbus area, Anderson area, and so a little bit outside. But coming here and having the opportunity to, even on the first interview of just looking around, I was mesmerized by what opportunities that people have here in this community and our kids. And to see our facilities, to see how large this campus is. I bring people in that I've worked with either in Columbus or Madison and say, hey, let's go tour around the facilities and check it out. They're like, oh, is this a college? No, this is just our high school.
Yeah.
This is a great place to be. And, I've, like you said, I've only been here 3 years. I feel like I've been here a little bit longer, but I've only been here 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's been a blessing, all 3 that I've been here so far, and I can't wait for more.
So walking in, Madison had a clean slate. Center Grove, obviously, probably a little bit more established.
Yeah, very established.
What are the things that Joe Bronkella is thinking about walking into that office that first year and be like, okay, I'm here. What do I do?
Yeah, first thing was like, what am I doing? How'd they get me?
Yeah,
How did I get picked?
Yeah.
And then I went, hey, Joni and Katie, I hope you can run this thing. No, I think I feel like I have a personality that works well with a lot of people. And I think that the opportunity to work with all the great people, coach-wise, family-wise, booster club-wise, which I had no idea that you could have this many booster clubs at a school like Madison or Columbus East, or people that want to help. And one of the first things that I was asked, probably like my second or third week of actual season, is what's different? What's different? I was like, man, you have no idea how many people chip in to help here. When I was at Madison, I'm sweeping out the ticket booths. I'm setting up the concession stand. I'm heating up the hot dogs. I'm cooking the popcorn. I'm setting up the video board. I'm doing the scoreboard, writing the scripts, and it's just me. And then toilet backs up in the middle of the game. Guess who's got to go do it? Well, here I have all kinds of help, and I have an abundance of people that are like, hey, what can we do to help you? I mean, Rob, you've been fortunate, and I've been fortunate to have you as an ally as well in regards to, hey, what can I do to help this, or what can I do? Yeah. And so coming to that, a lot of people think, oh, it's a huge school, it's so much, but there's so many people that are willing to be a part of helping anyone out. And that's what I love about this community.
Obviously, you knew from Center Grove from the standpoint of the football program, its success, the basketball program, softball program, baseball program, all those major sports. Coming into it, what was the first thing you tried to focus in on trying to learn more about?
Well, one of the first things I did was I wanted to see how have they done it, because it's established. It's been a continuous success in multiple programs, which really is kind of unheard of that we have so many programs that have so much success. What can I do to not mess it up, to keep it rolling the way it is? And then what can I do to imprint myself on it? What can I make things easier for people? Because that, one thing I like to pride myself on is I've coached, I've done some of those jobs that people don't want to do in regards to coaching, which, Rob, you could probably attest to as a freshman guy. that we've all worked our way up the ladder, and what can I do to take some of those other things off of coaches to let them coach? Or what can I do to take it off of a community person so they can watch the game and enjoy it and they can get more people involved? So I think that that's been a lot of my impact, or what I've been trying to do since I've been here.
I will say also, though, from a standpoint, being a community guy, coach guy, being, and I think that's what a trait that you have, that you are willing to help, right? And it's easier to help, wanting to help people that are willing to help.
Yeah.
Right. And so I know multiple conversations we have, we talk about how do we improve this? How do we do this? It could be basketball, it could be baseball, football. It doesn't matter what it is, but it could be girls basketball. It's what can I use my time, my treasure to help improve what you're doing for the many kids that are coming way after we're all gone, right?
I mean, our overall goal is to, number one of my goals is to what's going to make the best environment for the kids participating in it, whether it's our team or another team. What's going to make a great show for the community to come see? Yeah. And then what can we do to prolong that?
So kind of talking about the community and someone who's, I'm older than Rob. Everybody knows that. And I graduated in 92 here from Center Grove.
Way older than
me. And I think back, and I think this is still true. I think it kind of went away for a while, but I think it's been back the last decade, is how much younger kids look up to the older kids in the programs. And I think the high school program coaches have done a really good job of reaching out. Talk about some of the things that you like your programs to do for the community itself.
Yeah, so, I've seen a ton of involvement of not just kids and coaches going to youth leagues and watching games and being around the community. There's different things they try to do that's a fundraiser, not just for their program, but even for the feeders and for the youth, like trivia nights and so forth. Coach Hahn, and we kind of took part of this idea for us in our student athletic leadership group, but he would take kids to read to elementary kids. I believe Coach Moore has done that as well. Getting those high school kids, whether they're in a jersey or just a Center Grove T-shirt, to come in and identify themselves like, hey, I'm at the high school. Come watch us play, but I want to read you a book, or I want to be involved in what you guys are doing, is so impactful.
Be a role model.
Powerful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so then it reciprocates itself to that those kids that would come to a game and be like, oh, I know him. I know number 5. He came to my classroom last week. And that's a great, awesome feeling. Things like the Trick or Treat with the Trojans, which we kind of talked about before the show, doing that and seeing all these elementary students come in and see every one of our programs in some way involved, dressed up in a theme. And then I think they have something showing like, this is the baseball group, and they're always at the Sandlot with the dress up, and this is our dance team, this is our lacrosse group, and then the kids get to see that and then get a little bit more excitement. So then maybe in 7-8 years, whatever it is, oh, I want to do that, and I want to be a part of that. And then I think it just brings it all together, and then our high school kids seeing that and being a part of it, it just strengthens our community.
Yeah, I'm Chris Wood. This is Rob Thompson, and we're joined by Joe Bronkella, athletic director at Center Grove High School.
I want to get into students. 2 things. One, I want you to kind of give us a background of what SALT is, your student athletic leadership, right? Mm-hmm. And then I want to talk about something and being involved in Booster Club, Hardwood Club, being involved in the youth programs around here. I want to talk about student support in Center Grove.
Okay.
So we only have 2 listeners now because we only had 1 before our previous episode. Dan Anderson is going to be our next one. So now we have 2 listeners. So no one's listening. But let us know, or tell us a little bit of what SALT is, what your guys' initiative, what that looks like. What are you trying to empower our students?
Yeah, so SALT is our student athletic leadership team, and what they do is they are kind of a mixture of multiple sports, so they can have a little bit of student voice in our overall programming. And we do a once-a-month meeting in the mornings, and we have different committees or groups that put together. Like we have 4 leaders, for example, and we have a president, vice president, treasurer. They put together an agenda that we cover on those mornings, and then we look at topics of what's coming up. So, like, for example, We have National Girls and Women in Sports Day coming up in February. So what are we going to do with that event? What are they going to do? Are they going to greet? Who can greet? Who can be a part of this? We were supposed to have First Responders Night on Friday. They handmade thank you cards to all the first responders, thanking them for their contribution to our community. They put together care packs, and these are all ideas. I mean, we kind of prime the pump for an idea, but then they run with it. Trick or treat with the Trojans. Last year we did Christmas and crafts with Santa. We tried to do a field day last spring, but the weather didn't cooperate. But then we go in the summertime and we do a overall leadership with multiple schools in the IHSA. Last year was at the IMS, and they go up and they learn some more leadership activities, and then they interact with other schools and get some leadership speakers come in and talk to them, and then they do interactive games as well. So it's a way that we can try and include as many student athletes as we can where they are picked around from different programs. There's an application process. There's a process where the coach will then also say, hey, I want to nominate this kid, this kid, and this kid. It has grown to about 34-ish in that range for our committee, which is huge. You know, when I got here, I think 8 kids or 10 kids were involved. They did the leadership, which is at Plainfield that year, and I don't know. You'd have to ask Katie what they did the previous year, but I know we didn't do trick or treat with the Trojans. I know we didn't do some of those other community events. But then, you know, when we started that, we were like, hey, how can we give back? How can we go? The sportsmanship award we've won the last 2 years, that is 100% dedicated to work that they've done, because those community involvement activities and pieces are part of it. And then, you know, of course, our fans and our kids and our coaches acting well in games and so forth, getting pins, which we get sportsmanship pins. I don't know if you watch on Twitter and Facebook. We've seemed to get one every 2 months or month or so, and those help us in that realm too. And I feel like our students understanding what we want to do in regards to positivity towards other schools and ourselves has helped drive that, or I at least want to believe that that's helping drive that. We have a lot of good kids, and getting them sometimes even to break out of their shell and box to be a part of an event. If you remember right, last year, the First Responders Night, we had some staged in that room with the first responders, and some of them weren't very talkative kids that then interacted. And it's nice to get them to break out of that shell.
Yeah.
And the other piece of your question was something about boosters, I believe.
No, student
support. Student involvement. So one thing that we also talked
outside of SALT,
One thing that SALT started to try and get more student involvement is like, hey, let's talk to your teams. Let's get kids in free to events. So there are targeted events throughout the year that we have them come in almost every senior night, because we want to help them celebrate their peers. And then there may be like a rival game in girls basketball. Hey, let's get as many students there as we can. You know, because in a rival game, sometimes the atmosphere is based on the fans and not necessarily always the athletes on the court. And the more that they can get their peers to support them each other, it helps them drive to want to perform. That's my opinion. I mean, you could probably reciprocate that, but you know, we've also worked with Hardwood Club. What can we do to get more kids to our games? And we've talked about, I think you guys have done like pizzas for free if you come to the game and you get a ticket and a pizza, or T-shirts or handouts. We had
next is going to be Joe Bronkella's retirement fund.
Hopefully that's later than sooner. But you know, I feel like the get in free games have gone a little bit better this last year because it's a little bit more out there. But it's still, you know, not as many kids as I had hoped to see at a game. You know, when I was in high school in the 90s, the games were sellouts everywhere in Anderson, northern Indiana, and it's just a little bit different. You know, we have a great student section at like football games, but baseball games you've been to, we don't have a ton. Softball, kind of here and there. Basketball games, boys basketball, depends on the date and the game. And I wish we could try and get ourselves back to how that used to be.
Yeah.
So as the old fogey here at the table, one of the things that was a conversation on Saturday was the opportunity to have that game in the West Gym. And I know there's some challenges from a marketing standpoint, I assume, and some modern amenities there. But that place was probably about 45-50% full because of being a Saturday, an afternoon kind of game and the weather. But the volume in there with that number of people was incredible.
It was
A
loud.
lot of it was
It was
towards the
loud.
officials.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was loud.
Coach
though.
Hahn might have been part of that, but
And their coach had a little bit too.
their coach a little bit as well.
Yeah.
But just that environment and all the people I talked to about, man, if we could just play a couple of games here, and it used to be like that. I mean, is there thoughts about trying to bring that back to the West Gym more consistently, or is there challenges that the common person in the community doesn't realize that makes it more difficult to do that today?
So last year we did a boys and a girls game. We did Fishers and Floyd Central. This year we've done Southport. I don't think we've had a girls game this year. I'd have to think back. And then before that, I think it was kind of sporadic before that. There are challenges with the event. Handicap is a big one.
Yeah.
There's not if you don't stay up on the upper bowl, there's really nowhere to put a wheelchair. You can do an elevator, but you kind of have a bit of a walk to go and get an elevator and get down. Plus, then the other issue with the West Gym is the parking. With that new construction wing going up right now, it's very limited. Now, I did ask a couple people coming in for that game, how was the parking? And they said, it's about 50% full or so forth, which is good. And eventually, once that construction is done, it can potentially help us with more. But I've seen other issues like some people. I had a person come in. I think it was 2 years ago. Their wheelchair didn't fit through the doorway because it's just right, small enough, and the wheelchair was just wide enough. So then, how do we navigate? We had to go to a different entrance, take a bar out, and so forth. There are things like that.
Sure.
Another thing that I am very cautious of is if you look at the baselines, the bleacher base on that would be the north side, and the posts with the handles on the south side. Man, every time a kid goes on a fast break or for a drive in the lane, I get really nervous because it's so close and there's not a lot of padding. The post has it, but the bleacher base, and if you don't have people in those stands to kind of help absorb it, it just scares me sometimes. Now, I know those kids are aware of their surroundings, but sometimes you never know what could happen. So those are things that we think about when we look at the places to put it. Locker rooms, our boys varsity locker rooms all the way in the west, in the Vandy, coming down. So we would utilize that extra locker room that's kind of in the hallway. The visiting team has a great spot right outside the tunnel, but we are a little bit more inconvenienced. Not that big of a deal, but when you're out of the norm, which coaches are very supersticious, it kind of changes things too.
Yeah. So are there things that can be done at the Vandy gym to besides obviously having just consistently larger crowds for each game, are there things that are looked at trying to be done to potentially in some way? I mean, is there acoustically anything that can be done? Because the volume, it's just, to me, a whole different thing. I'm not trying to go on a rant on it. Just kind of curious if there's things that you've seen out there in your experiences that, hey, I wonder if we could do this as an example.
It's so big that I don't know if acoustically, we fixed our sound system since last year, and it sounds better.
It does.
In regards to announcer, music can be a little bit louder now, so we have that piece of it. But in regards to a game, nothing beats fans in the stands.
Yeah, true.
There's no other way to say that we're going to get louder and get more people there.
Yeah, and that's specifically basketball, but it's across all sports, right? And I think that's I want to kind of get into what does Center Grove athletics look like if you're looking into a crystal ball and 10 years from now, we're all hanging around talking about this podcast, 10 years ago, but we have you out 10 years from now. Hey, Joe, what'd you do the last 10 years? I think student support's one of those things, right? And that's just having conversations with you. But what do you want Center Grove to look like under Joe Bronkella?
I want Center Grove to not just everyone see, we have state championships or state runners-ups and we have great success like that. I want people to look at us as the example of, that's how you run an event. That's how a facility should look. That's how many they have all those kids in an event. How do we duplicate that so people are trying to duplicate us, not just on the field, but with every other piece to it. And whether that's increasing our technology in the facilities to make it more interactive for the fans, like a professional venue, more so than what it already is. Whether that's having a way of sponsor to get the entire community in for free for a game. I don't know what that could be, but looking at that and looking at examples of ideas of like, hey, here's how we can upgrade this. We have great facilities, but we can continue to increase and improve. We don't want to stalemate. I don't want to look back 10 years from now and say, it was great in 2026, but we never really improved this or this or this. We want to always continually try to be cutting edge. We're making great segues like in that new golf softball building. Not very many schools have an opportunity to have 3 full simulators with a putting green, and then next to it you have a full infield for softball with 3 hitting cages, and on the backside you have a entire cheer building. Getting upgraded in those type of things are really impactful for not just our programming, but opportunities for our kids.
I want to make one comment to that because I think it's really important. If you're not in the building after 3 o'clock at Center Grove High School, and you said golf, softball, and dance, we could probably do a research project and count on the schools in the state that have buildings specifically for those group of sports. Okay. But what people need to understand at Center Grove, and I've coached here before, and I've been in the building at 3 o'clock. I may have a basketball practice at 3 o'clock, but I got a dance team right next to me playing their music, and you got balls bouncing around, and that's till 9 o'clock at night.
Oh yeah, every day.
And so I think it's important, and just to have some clarity on all of that, is that Center Grove is providing a lot of opportunities for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of kids, instead of going out and doing things they shouldn't be doing, we are providing opportunities across the board, whether it's athletically, in the arts,
yes,
choral, whatever it is. And what people, I hope, understand, and maybe the point I'm trying to get, is that it takes a lot of people to do that. And it takes money, it takes time, it takes volunteerism, and it takes a heart and some kindness to overlook, oh, it's Center Grove. And I'm glad you said the sports. I can say these things on here because I'm not employed by the school. I bet if you ask people outside of the community of Center Grove, do you think Center Grove got a sportsmanship pin? No, because there's a perception of what we are, and that's what we're trying to, with this podcast. There's a lot of beautiful things happening in this community. And so I just want to make the point that your efforts, Dan Anderson's efforts, who we had on our previous podcast, it's people like you that come to work every day and are fighting for our kids, no matter what they're doing. And if they're not involved, they have every opportunity to be involved.
Absolutely. I don't know if you ventured out much from the West Gym on Saturday. We had a state competition for dance in almost every other aspect of our building. It worked out that we could do our game at the time frame they did, and they kind of pushed back a little bit. They're not pushed back against us, but pushed back their start times. That's not nice. Just because of weather, but just to be able to work together. And that's one thing that people don't know is that, performing arts, band, athletics, the school administration, academics, we all have to work together. And there's so many moving parts that are going. And yes, if you walk over to the high school right now, it's 7:49 at night. I guarantee everything's being used right now.
Yep.
And it's going probably till 10 o'clock, and then Saturday and Sunday all day. And we're fortunate enough to have a big pool, and there is nonstop, not just our aquatics, but USA Swimming and the youth swimming, and it's public swim.
You're being a community partner.
The public's coming in and doing adult swim. There's all kinds of stuff going on to not just help our kids, but to help people within our community.
Again, joined by Joe Bronkella here on the Center Grove Trojan Beat. And Joe, I'm going to turn the focus here a little bit, kind of look at scheduling and some of the challenges with scheduling that are out there. And what are some of the things that you see as achievements on the scheduling side as athletic director? And what are some of those things that you're working to try to do potentially for the school system?
So what I would love is to have 4-year contracts with every school and every sport, so I don't spend all my off time looking for games. Not this past season, but the season before, we played 15 football opponents in 9 weeks amongst the 3 levels, which is unheard of. This year we had a lot more stability. However, we did play 2 out-of-state groups, one from Baltimore, Maryland, and one from Kentucky and Ohio. So we had 3 out-of-state. Basketball this year went to Cincinnati. Soccer last year went down towards Cincinnati Central. Then they went up north to the Fort Wayne area. They went down to Evansville area. So we have the opportunity to go to lots of places to see a lot of great competition, which does help us. However, the scheduling piece of that becomes difficult because trying to figure out, hey, we can go to Trinity and Louisville, but how are we going to work that out on the school night to get back enough time that kids can get involved with their education too? And we only have so many Saturdays that we can do things. So the scheduling piece has been interesting, difficult, and fun at sometimes too.
Is any of that because of not being in a conference right now, or is it just a whole different level to it that people don't think about?
So with a conference, we were one of 8, so you have 7 guaranteed events for every sport. We don't have that anymore. We don't have a guarantee of a sporting event. I mean, shoot, some schools could potentially play us one year and figure out, we don't know that we want to continue on beyond that, or 2 years or whatever it may be. Sometimes we do 1-year gaps with schools because we don't have that conference tie to make a school, and I don't want to say make because that sounds like we're forcing, but the agreement that you're going to play each other in every sport. So, at every sport that we have a guarantee of looking for 7 events for sure every year that we shouldn't have to if we were in a conference. So that becomes a difficult situation. We've figured it out. We've had, I believe, all but maybe 2 of our 21 seasons of every year try to be filled. Now, low level makes it a little bit more challenging because sometimes you play schools that may not have a freshman program in that sport, or maybe we don't in that sport and they do. So they're like, well, we want to play a freshman and you don't have it, so we're going to move on to somebody that does. So there are all kinds of other challenges to it too. That's not just the other school, but sometimes can be us or our location and the weekday that we have open. One hardship that we have is trying to balance home and away. Sometimes when you have to take an opponent, you have to take it where they want to take it. So they may say, we have to have a home game and we want to play them. We might have to go there, which causes us to be off balanced. So conference helps us in that.
I call it the John Calipari rule. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
He's a big Kentucky fan.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
No, absolutely not.
He's not. He's not.
So yeah, the conference piece. When I was in Madison, we were in a conference. We left, became independent. A little bit different type of navigation when you're not a top tier team in every sport, because it's a little bit easier to find some of the games. Plus, I had Kentucky to work with down there, but not quite so much here.
And the other thing, sorry, Rob, but the other thing that kind of pops in my mind is Center Grove's kind of unique on the south side, being as large as it is. There's not a lot of schools that are on the north side. You have lots of schools that same size. West side, you have a lot of schools like that. You have east side schools. Center Grove's unique on the south side, so that has to play into that as well, doesn't it? In terms of trying to find those logistical things, or even potentially considering conferences.
Absolutely, and we've picked up Castle in a lot more games.
Yeah,
the 69 corridor has been outstanding to be able to get some more of the bigger schools in the south. However, it's still a bit of a drive, not as much as it would have been. But, going up to a Carmel, the problem with a Carmel is they don't get out of school till 4 something. So we played them last week in basketball, and they were late. And that happens, and that causes frustration for fans who want to get to a 6 o'clock game. But it's also one of those kind of things of being on the south side just far enough that the bigger schools that want to play us have a little bit more of a travel.
But it's playing Carmel.
It is playing Carmel, and I'm so glad to get them back on our schedules as we're developing this school year.
I think it's great. I'm done now, Rob, I promise.
You sure?
I think.
I'm just kidding. No, so I think I want to actually, great question, because, from a basketball standpoint, growing up, we're always trying to, from a youth level and running hoops and, trying to tap into Bloomington schools and Columbus schools, and never really had a whole lot of luck with that. And it's probably more of us just we were tripping over our own feet running hoops because when Coach Hahn came in and started the hoops program. But I will say, though, Whiteland's growing. Mm-hmm. Bloomington schools are growing. Columbus schools are growing. And so has there been any thought about some of those other schools maybe that might have been in our conference or sectional a long time ago that are the playing field is level or becoming more level as population-wise, right? Are you guys taking that into consideration when scheduling, or what goes into all of that?
So I want to look at proximity, school size, and value of the event for us. So is it something that if we're playing I don't know, a 1A school, is that going to be beneficial to our kids? No, it's not. Is it a Bloomington North? What do we not have them in? So one thing that we picked them up in the last 2 years was volleyball. They were a sectional opponent. They're not now because we got flipped into a North sectional. But they were a sectional opponent, a school that's a good size, and a school that's competitive. So those 3 things were a great piece to get. So, of course, I inked them into a 4-year deal, and they were, I guess, not knowing and said, yeah, we'll do it. But we, looking at that, one thing that does become difficult is looking at basketball. We had 2 20-plus win seasons in a row. Other schools get on a place like John Harrell's website and they're like, oh man, look, they were ranked here, here, and here. And some schools will look at that and not play us, whether it helps them or not. They just don't want that game on their schedule, whatever it may be, because they had 20 some wins. A team's a year to year team.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
We don't know what they're going to be next year. We don't know what injuries are going to await somebody to cause them to go uphill, downhill, or so forth. So, I would say that we're not. Scared is not the right word, but we're not intimidated to play not anybody, but we would play almost anybody to make sure we can fill our schedule with quality. The issue also becomes is travel. So we're looking at basketball only. We go to Jennings, we go to Jeffersonville, we go to Floyd Central, we go to St. X this year. That's a lot of travel on our boys.
Yeah.
I mean that's unfortunate, but that's kind of the way that it fell with it, and it goes back to kind of being out of the conference 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and then all of a sudden we're trying to catch up on games, and then trying to fill those because those 2-hour games or 2-hour trips have to be on a Friday or Saturday because no one wants to come back at 11:30 and then try to get kids up for school the next day or later, depending if it's an overtime and so forth. So those are a lot of the obstacles we go to. I try to get as many close opponents as I can because we have a plethora of schools in Indianapolis. I mean, what is it? 15 miles north of here, you travel, we get like 5 6A schools or 4 6A schools, and some of them will play us in sports and some of them won't. Some sports are a lot more challenging. Finding soccer matches are very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Finding wrestling duels, that's almost impossible. So it also has to fall in. The other thing that we don't think about is they're in conferences, so they have that issue of they have to fill their conference games. Well, they might not have a room for non-conference, and that's really it falls onto us in football, especially where we're open. Week 9, everyone's in conference play by then, and it's so tough to find games later in the season. Week 1 and 2, most people are open to look, but it's a 4-year out schedule too.
Do you think for certain sports though it's flipped for the better? Like I'm going to reference baseball. Being in the MIC, a lot of the outside of Carmel, maybe LC and LN every now and then or whatever, right? Most of the times those games would be 15-1 games. Where now, like, you can schedule maybe more. In baseball, it's probably a little bit different. Softball is probably a little bit different. But has it helped any at all?
I do think in some sports, being able to pick your opponents more freely can be helpful. I think it helps you find an opponent, whether you're going to see them later in the postseason, so you already know what to expect, or whether it's somebody who's at the caliber that's going to really challenge us, like somebody that we could potentially see as. And sometimes, and that even falls in a 2 and a 4-year, not even conference affiliated, like Jennings County basketball. I keep referencing back to basketball, and it's just kind of we're in season. I'm thinking about it. Are they going to be exactly what they were last year when they were very competitive? They've fallen off a little bit, and then next year they graduate what they have left. So even though we're not a conference affiliation, it's still a school we're contracted with that may not potentially help us or may not help them on vice versa.
Correct.
So that is another thing we look at when we look at linking up long-term deals.
I got one last question, and I think we might be up to 4 listeners now.
Oh, my wife's on, so she's listening.
Yeah. What if someone is listening in the community, and I'm going to ask this because I know how hard you and your team work, the endless amount of hours that you put in. I've got one son in the high school athletic program. Hopefully I'll have another one coming up here soon. So I see it, and I see it on a level of where we're trying to raise money and we're trying to support a specific sport and corralling people in our community to help with that sport. But I'll just something general. If someone is listening and they're a business in our community or an individual in the community that may have a passion for volleyball or wrestling or basketball, whatever it may be, what are the best steps for them to either get involved, volunteer? Because I know that I get hit up all the time for volunteers for basketball, right? And I think some of that's just because I'm connected within that group, so that's good to have. But if people are not within their community, or maybe their kids graduated and they're still, what's the best way to get connected with you guys? And what are some opportunities that if they did connect that could be beneficial for you, but then also for them to spend some time here at this awesome school?
So I actually have people randomly that will email like, hey, I have a big interest in volleyball. and what can I do to help out, whether that's monetary or volunteering. And I will provide anyone with information on what they need. In the athletic department as a whole, what we always need are people to help with events. We have a lot of events. We have large scale events, and trying to find people to do some simple things like thank you again for stat tracking this year, because we were going to be in a mess where we couldn't have someone stat track. And some people may not think that that's a big deal, but being able to look up to see how many fouls somebody has when you're not doing it on your own, on like the old style where they used to keep their little paper.
Oh, it's great to see it there.
It's huge to have it up there. And because of people like you, Rob, who helped out, we now have that for the games when we didn't have somebody.
Yeah.
So, reaching out to our office, whether it's phone call or email, and then saying, hey, I'm really interested in this. Maybe they want to help volunteer coach, and getting them pointed in the right direction. And we can do that. Money always helps in things, but sometimes time and volunteerism is way more important than money.
Yeah. Awesome. What we'll do is when we put this out, we'll put a link up to athletic director's office.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if anybody wants to reach out and find out ways to get involved at any level.
And the other thing we have a lot of postseason events that we host for the state. Even getting involved in that, because when the school year ends and we're running baseball sectional on June 2nd, finding some of the educators that help us out, well, they're already on summer break and may already be gone. And finding community members to help us is sometimes very helpful.
Okay.
Whether it's just parking cars or like directing where to park or actually running a stat board.
I'm going to close with this. I'm going to hand it over to Coach Wood. I appreciate you. I'm glad you took the time to be on here. I witnessed the endless hours that you put in. I have seen your family live 3 hours apart, and I've seen you guys here together. And I know that there's sacrifices that we don't need to get into, but as a father and as a professional, I know that it's probably been hard on you. The transitions was probably difficult. I hope that you've been welcomed with open arms from this community, which I think you have. But keep doing what you're doing, man. Your fire and your passion for this, I think you can do big things for this community.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you are absolutely right. Since day one I got here, it's been nonstop positivity from not just like booster people or coaches, but parents. Recognizing Katie and Joni I have to do today before I leave too, because we can be nowhere near what we are without those two, and the hours that they put in, no one even knows. Yeah. Even at home.
It's your whole group.
Yeah, even at home, they are nonstop. Moving that game on Friday to Saturday may not seem like much, just because people will go from, I don't have to be there at 7:30, now I got to be there at 1:30. There's a lot of logistics to moving a game, and without those two, there's no way we could do that.
Joni's Hole and Katie Fisher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Joe, thank you very much for joining us tonight. All I hear from people is praises and everything that you do, and that's from parents, that's from coaches, and as a coach in the middle school program, I appreciate what you do to help the Higginsons out there and the Winglers out there and those kind of things. So, thank you from all of us as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. It's great to get word out about our community, and so that people can see a lot of the positivity and get to know people within our community, because we're so busy all the time that maybe we don't have time to sit and talk about it, but this is a great and platform for that.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, and obviously you'll spread the word about what we're trying to do as well. We appreciate it, and we're out there, everyone, trying to look at possible places here in the future to host our show, be it Chilly Water or other places. If you're interested in having us come to your place, we like the opportunity of doing it in a community perspective and having people hanging out and bringing something to a business, but also it's just got a little different feel to it. Tonight we kind of put this together for us here. But if you're interested, you can drop us an email at cgtrojanbeat@gmail.com. Or if you have someone that you think could be someone key for us to highlight in the community, such as a Dan Anderson or a Joe Bronkella, don't hesitate to drop us an email and let us know those thoughts, and we'll reach out to you as time permits to definitely consider having them on and get some more questions and thoughts about that individual. So, again, Joe, thank you very much. Rob?
You the man.
Thanks.
You the man.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. We'll talk to you again here soon here on the Center Grove Trojan Beat. Thank you much.